this fascist Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, Trump's Gestapo within the Department of Homeland Security. I'm tired of these weak Democrats. We threw immigrants under the bus in 2024. I've never seen a complete abandonment of the immigrant community that the Democratic Party had last fall.
Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup.
This is Ashley with Status Coup.
On the ground.
In Philadelphia.
Flint, Michigan. East Palestine, Ohio. Please support the leading independent news outlet on the ground.
Covering what the corporate media covers up. Okay, so I am here outside of the gates of, again, the so-called Alligator Alcatraz. I am speaking with Oliver Larkin, who is running for office. So Oliver, first of all, what are you running for and why are you here today?
I'm running for the United States House of Representatives in Congressional District 23 in South Florida, which includes Broward and Palm Beach County, currently represented by incumbent Democrat Jared Moskowitz. And I'm here today to stand with the immigrant community in South Florida and all across the country. I think what this fascist administration is doing is awful. I couldn't countenance it. On the day that I announced my campaign, I had to be here and stand with this community.
I appreciate that. So you are running for office. Policy-wise, what would you do to counter what's happening here in Florida? Again, you would be covering the district, which includes where I used to live in Broward County. I lived in Deerfield Beach the last 2 years that I was living in Florida. So those are you know, some of my friends still live there, invested in seeing that area improve. What would your policy prescription be for what's happening here?
Well, I think to start, we need a unified Democratic caucus in the Congress. And Congressman Moskowitz was one of 46 Democrats who voted for the Larkin Riley Act that has empowered this fascist Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, Trump's Gestapo within the Department of Homeland Security. I'm tired of these weak Democrats. We threw immigrants under the bus in 2024. We had Vice President Harris talking about building a border wall.
How much of that wall did he build? I think the last number I saw is about 2%. And then when it came time for him to do a photo op, you know where he did it? In the part of the wall that President Obama built.
But you're agreeing to a bill that would earmark $650 million to continue building that wall.
I pledge that I am going to bring forward that bipartisan bill to further strengthen and secure our border.
That Trump was talking about in 2016. I've never seen a complete abandonment of the immigrant community that the Democratic Party had last fall. And that was a motivation for me to stand up and run for office, because the immigrant community, the people here, parking tickets, civil violations. This is the equivalent of getting a speeding ticket and they'll throw you on the asphalt in the middle of Big Cypress, out where no one can hear you scream. I think it is awful, and we need to call it for what it is. This is evil. This is not right. This is not American. I think people really need to understand what is happening in the state of Florida when it comes to education and the way that the far right has actually empowered fascist administrators of state universities. I'll give one example, the one that's in my district, Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, that is led by a former Republican state representative who's also an executive vice president at the GEO Group, the privately run prison facility that administers the Broward Transitional Center, where the Haitian national woman Marie-Ange Blaise was died in privately administered ICE custody. My incumbent congressman has not said Marie-Ange Blaise's name, has not visited the facility. He's continuing to empower ICE. So we need to understand the links between this police state and what the right is doing on our college campuses, because when we don't have free education and when we don't have freedom of movement and immigrants are being targeted and criminalized, it affects everybody. It affects your kids that are going to Tallahassee for school in the fall. My brother's 18 years old. He's going to be a college freshman. So this is of great concern to me. And being able to uphold the right to protest. There's been so many attacks from the DeSantis administration on demonstrations like this, and people are scared. So I think my message to Status Coup viewers across the country is we need more people in actions like this. It's not enough to just post from behind a screen. We need to be in solidarity and in community with one another, because it's easy to be scared when you're by yourself, but when you're together, you feel empowered. And that's what I feel here today. with the community members who've come out to speak out against these abuses. Again, I can't countenance this. This is why I'm here. This is why I believe everyone is here standing to demonstrate. And hopefully there will be more actions, not only here but across the country, where people show up en masse to show their dissent to what this administration is doing.
Support this critically important on-the-ground reporting as a Status Coup member and get great perks. Become a member right here.
I appreciate that. I mean, one of my favorite topics to talk about on Status Coup is what the Democrats are doing wrong, because they have kind of put themselves on a pedestal where, you know, they're the adults in the room. They're the ones who are supposed to be countering the fascism of the Trump administration. And I mean, they have failed. They have failed to do any of those things. I guess, you know, you are talking about a weak Democratic Party. What would you like to see them actually doing? Because at this point, I have seen none of the actual Democratic establishment. No leader, Hakeem Jeffries, nobody has been doing any work to actually counter what the administration is doing. So what would you like to see Democrats doing in this moment?
Keep their eyes on the ball. I saw the statistic yesterday. I believe Sam Stein reported that less than half of Americans, 48%, even know what's in Trump's big ugly bill. And 8% of people polled know that this bill cuts Medicaid. And what has Democratic leadership been doing? What has Leader Jeffries been doing, and Senator Gillibrand and Representative Swalwell? They've been attacking the person who's giving millennials and Gen Z some actual hope of remaining in the Democratic Party. And they're trying to stiff arm them to cling on to power with what little power we actually have. We're watching this administration completely roll over any Democratic resistance. This is the first unified Republican government in Washington in 8 years since the last time we were in this situation. I think that Democratic leadership needs to stop criticizing their own, stop trying to eat their young. The beatings will continue until morale improves, people. We need to start celebrating the progressive values of this party, the party of FDR, of Lyndon Johnson. We need to embrace what a big, bold, progressive agenda can be in this country that's inclusive of everybody, regardless of their documented status.
On Democrats, I would also say, you know, New York City, we've been talking about this a lot, just had a major win. Our mayoral primary, Zohran Mamdani, a, you know, Democratic socialist, just won the primary in our state. There has been a massive campaign from Democrats to essentially make it so that he does not get elected mayor of New York City, despite him bringing out overwhelming amount, historic amounts of young people for this election. I mean, what do you think that says about the Democrats? Because again, they keep saying, well, we want more young leaders. We want more people that speak to the values that the Democratic voting base actually has. Well, here is someone who has spoken to that. He has spoken to meeting the material needs that a lot of New Yorkers specifically have said that they have. And I lived in Florida. The area that I lived in primarily, it's a working class area. I know people who live there. I knew people who lived there. It is, again, they have the same needs as people in New York City. The working class people in New York City have the same, you know, basic ask that anybody in those counties would have. So I guess I would ask you, what does this say about the Democratic Party and their effort to fight against Zohran in a way that we don't see them fighting against Trump and his fascism? And for you specifically, what would your prescription be for that? If you are going to, you know, be taking care of the working class people of Broward County, what policies would you offer them? What would you have to say to those people?
Yeah, well, first to the point of the criticism from the Democratic Party establishment to Assemblyman Mamdani, unfortunately, that's more of the same. I'm someone who started in politics by driving to New Hampshire when I was 23 years old. I quit my job as a 725 restaurant line cook in Tennessee, and I went to go volunteer for Bernie Sanders. And I showed up to the office every single day until they hired me as an intern, and then they hired me as a field organizer. And I was in the Portsmouth field office in New Hampshire when my neighboring Congresswoman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, as chair of the DNC, shut us out of the voter activation network. We couldn't contact voters on the eve of the Democratic primary debate, the only one in New Hampshire between Secretary Clinton and Senator Sanders. That was the Democratic Party establishment putting its thumb on the scale against progressives. We know how that went from the WikiLeaks and the resignations that followed that. And that completely decapitated any kind of progressive movement that we've seen in this country that can fight back against this administration, which is why we're now back where we were, sadly, so many years ago. And I think to the point of what Democrats can do and what Assemblyman Mondani did so well, $25 an hour minimum wage with $30 an hour in New York City. If you ask any national Democratic leader in Congress, what should the minimum wage be? They will hide behind a curtain ever since Senator Sinema did the thumbs down to the $15 wage.
Ms. Sinema, no.
They'll cry foul about the parliamentarian, but no one will actually tell you what it takes to actually live a decent life in this country. And from my perspective, you need to earn at least $1,000 a week, $25 an hour, minimum wage. That's the floor. And we need to also be inclusive of the tipped minimum wage. With the cost of living crisis, where we're asking consumers to subsidize the wages of cheap business owners that don't want to pay their workers a living wage. And in my district, in District 23, where we have entertainment, nightlife, we have bartenders, hostesses, these people who depend on tips for their wages, who suffer wage theft, who suffer sexual harassment on the job. No one should be subjected to that to get what they're owed. So I believe in a minimum wage that is $25 federally. The fight for 15 started in 2012. If that had indexed to the rate of inflation, it would be nearly $25 an hour today. And yet we've gone the longest in the history of the United States without raising the federal minimum wage. So tipped wages, ADA workers, minors, incarcerated workers, everybody, $25 an hour. And that's just one policy, but I think it is indicative of the clarity that you don't hear Democrats talking about with this esoteric language about the economy when no one's actually making enough money to make ends meet. So that's one policy of many, including Medicare for all, including a Green New Deal, including a national jobs guarantee that I would fight for in Congress.